Hi, Math 2 students. Go ahead and turn your packet open to page 14. So far we have learned how to factor trinomials, all right? And remember I told you that eventually we're going to need to learn how to take out a GCF and then factor a trinomial. So that's what we're going to do today, okay? So here at example A, all right, we need to look for a GCF. Now, whenever I tell you to factor something, the first thing you automatically should look for is a GCF, okay? And if I look here, there is a GCF that I can take out of all of these. And in that case, that's going to be 3x. All right, so I can take a 3x out. And remember, when you take out a GCF, you need to divide everything by your GCF, which in this case, I am going to get x squared plus 5x minus 6. All right. And then from here, we can look at the trinomial that we have left over, and we can factor this using our trinomial factoring, okay? So that's where we go ahead and multiply the first and the last, which in this case, I get -6. So I need to multiply to -6 and add to +5, okay? Now, something like this, you've got to pay really, really close attention to your signs because I feel like a lot of kids would be like, oh, -3 and -2, give me a 5. But you got to make sure that we're adding to a 5 and multiplying to a -6. So let's go ahead and list out our factors of 6. We've got 1 and 6, 2 and 3. Now, since I need to multiply to a negative, I know that I'm going to have one negative number. And I'm adding to a positive, so my negative is going to go on my smaller guy. My bigger number needs to be positive. So now I look at these pairings and I say, okay, well, which pairing is going to add to 5? That's actually going to be -1 and 6, okay? So what we're going to do, this GCF, we're going to add that to our final answer, but just kind of ignore him for right now. All right, and we're going to focus on our trinomial. So we get x squared minus x, or 1x, right? Plus 6x minus 6. So then we go ahead and do our grouping, okay? So I look at my first group. What can I pull out here? I can take an x out. I divide each of these by x, and I get x minus 1. I look at my second grouping. What can I divide out of this second group? I can take a 6 out. 6x divided by 6 gives me x. -6 divided by 6 gives me a -1. I can see that I got matching binomials here, so that tells me I did this right. We take our GCFs and make a binomial out of that, so x plus 6 times, and then our repeated binomial, which is x minus 1. All right, so at this point, we are kind of combining the two methods that we've already learned. All right, so let's go ahead and try this next example here. Let's look for a GCF. Is there anything that we can divide all three of these numbers by? And in this case, we can divide all of them by a 5, okay? So we're going to take our GCF of 5 out and divide each of them by 5. I can't take an x out here because the 50 doesn't have an x to give. So when I do that, I get x squared minus 7x plus 10. So now I'm going to go ahead and factor my trinomial. So I'm going to multiply my first and my last. I get 10. All right. So what two numbers multiply to 10, add to -7? So I'll list out my factors of 10. I've got 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. I want to multiply to a positive but add to a negative. I need two negatives for that. My pairing that's going to work is -2 and -5. Now, if you recall, I told you just to drag your GCF down. You do need your GCF in your final answer. If you don't put your original GCF in your final answer, it's wrong. But sometimes I feel like if you drag it down the whole way and include it while you're doing the trinomial, it gets too crowded and you get confused. So I'll just drag it down for my final answer there and work on my trinomial. All right. So I rewrote my -7 using a -2 and a -5. I'm going to take out my GCF here, which is just x. I get x minus 2. Here, I got to take out my GCF. Now, in this case, because my first term is negative, I know I got to take a negative out, and my GCF is going to be 5. So I divide each of those by -5, which is going to give me a positive x and a negative 2. These match up, so I'm good to go. I've got x minus 5 and x minus 2. All right. That is my final answer there. All right. We got one more to try here. So let's look and see if we have a GCF. In this case, we do. The GCF is going to be 6x, okay? So I'm going to take a 6x out. I end up with x squared plus 5x plus 4. All right. At this point, why don't you pause the video and see if you can do it. Give it a shot. See if you can continue factoring this. So at this point, we will drag our GCF down to the bottom, and I'm going to focus on my trinomial here. We multiply. 1 times 4 gives me a 4. I want to multiply to 4 and add to 5. My options are 1 and 4, or 2 and 2. I want to multiply to a positive, add to a positive, so I'm going to use 2 positive numbers. I'm just going to use 1 and 4 there. So I get x squared plus 1x, which I write as x, plus 4x plus 4. I take out my GCF. I get x plus 1. Take out my GCF here, which is 4. I get x plus 1 again, which is good, because I should be getting that, right? And then I end up with x plus 4 times x plus 1, which I can go ahead and drag next to my GCF here to get my final answer. And again, a lot of kids forget to bring that GCF all the way down. Do not forget that, because you'll get the question wrong. All right, so we do that, and that is our final guy there.